Hey, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Scottish Connection. And we will be launching these noon every Saturday. I will be joined by a Scottish artist. And today we have master musician and drummer, Ray Weston. Thank you very much, Ray. Yeah. And how are you holding out there, Ray, with all of the social distancing?
It's fine, Steve. You know, it's like it's almost starting to become a bit of the new normality. You know, it'll be interesting to see when it all kind of starts to dissipate and we get back to normal. A lot of people say, "Oh, it'll never be normal again." You bet your life it will be.
Yeah, yeah. We need to be positive.
I think the 405 will be as busy as it always was, you know, and stuff like that. You know, it'll be interesting to see, but you know, we're faring okay. We're doing all right. You know,
That's good.
And it gives me a bit of time to. I've been doing online teaching as well, which has been great. You know, not always a thing that you had a one-to-one with another student. It would work better that way, you know. But I'm actually finding that I'm getting good communication with the online teaching. So that's another kind of benefit. Obviously, for the actual people who suffer the virus and get it, that's terrible. You know, I mean, actually, I had a bass player friend of mine back in London. Not really a friend, more of an acquaintance. He's the first person I know who caught the COVID, and he passed away. So,
oh, wow. I'm really sorry to hear that, Ray.
Yeah, that's you know, that's the reality of it, really. You know.
Yeah, it is. It's like everybody is getting touched by it now. There's like hardly anyone I know that doesn't know somebody who's passed. But anyway, welcome to the Scottish Connection, and RIP all those folks. I have some questions for Ray. The first one being is, what part of Scotland are you from, and where did you grow up?
I belong to Glasgow, dear old Glasgow town, and there's nothing the matter with Glasgow, 'cause it's going round and round. And Glasgow, I'm from Glasgow. You know?
Oh, right. Oh, thank you. Did you? How long have you lived? When did you leave Glasgow?
I left when I just turned 22, literally the day before I moved from Glasgow to London. You know, I joined a band down there that had a record contract, and everyone was living in the one house, and it was great. You know, London, 1976, just before the punk boom. You know, and it was great. You know,
Yeah.
For me, a Glaswegian, moving into the big city of London was like amazing. You know, it was like a kid going to Disneyland for the first time. You know.
Yeah, it's London. London does that. I remember when I first went there myself. What was your inspiration for becoming a drummer, and when did that happen in your life?
I think I thought about it before actually becoming it, meaning that you know, when I was old enough to understand music, you know, like my parents always had a gramophone around with old 78s, and then they started getting like 33 BP albums and stuff like that. They would get all types of things from Jim Reeves to Frankie Vaughan to what was happening in that era of the 50s, you know, and so I got, and I think the Everly Brothers was actually Wake Up Little Susie, that acoustic guitar. I thought, oh, I like that. For no reason at all. I didn't know anything about music apart from, hey, I like the sound of that. So click, you know, something went off, and then I started becoming one of those little guys, 8 years, 9 years of old, and buying singles, you know. So like the 60s, I bought lots of singles. it was the days when you could listen to it in the cubicle before buying it and go, oh,
Yeah,
you know,
I remember those days.
you know,
Yeah,
and it was fun, you know, and that really got me on to music. And then, you know, roll on a few years, and a few school buddies were playing guitar, and there was a snare drum in the corner uh, on a stand, and they said, "You play that?" And I was like, "Oh, yeah, okay." Well, because I'd always wanted to, you know, do the drums, and uh, but it kind of Ringo was probably a big influence, you know, because obviously the Beatles, when they came about, it was like this phenomenon. It was just amazing. You got
yeah,
caught in this tidal wave of like, what is this, you know? And they were like, you know, they had great songs, you know, from, I mean, if you think from when they started, they had about an 8-year recording career. Now, if you think about from Love Me Do, and they ended up with things like Strawberry Fields, I mean, it's like, whoa.
yeah,
So we grew up with them. So Ringo was a big part of that for me. And then other guys, obviously, I love John Bonham. Who didn't? You know, I mean, he was like a great drummer. And I started realizing that a few of the really good players who even played pop music were actually jazz players. They could play really good jazz, and I realized that. So I started listening to Buddy Rich, and Billy Cobham, and Lenny White, and Tony Williams, and all those guys. So that kind of influenced me as well, you know, to get like become a better musician, listening
yeah,
to really big top
yeah.
players.
I was reading that George Mcgowan was one of your teachers. Do you know what part of Scotland he was from?
He was from, he was from George was like the Buddy Rich of Scotland. You know, at the time he played great modern jazz, bebop, and you know, drum solos, like made it sound great. Looked like Buddy as well in his approach. He was a
Yeah,
fan. So I thought, God, I'm gonna learn some of that, you know. And so I had lessons off him for a while. But I have to admit, as much as George was a great drummer, he was a really good drummer. He always used to insist on meeting in the pub. And most of it was like I'd meet him in the pub, and then we'd be there for about halfway into what our lesson time should have been, you know. And
yeah,
so then, but he was a great, rather than being a teacher, he was a great influence because I watched him a lot. I used to go and see him play, pick up things, and then just have a one-to-one with him. So a lot of good players are like that. They're not really teachers. They're just great at what they do, communicate. And George was one of those guys. He just he probably, you know, did teaching just as maybe I'll make some extra bucks here or something like that, you know.
yeah.
But he was and still is an amazing drummer in Glasgow.
When sorry, when you guys were talking, was there any discussion about traditional Scottish drumming? You know, the traditional military kind of drumming, or anything, you know, like some of the Scottish drumming from the Highlands and any kind of that stuff. Was any of that in your roots? And did you ever play with any bagpiper or any traditional type of axe in your early years?
Yeah. Well, I think when I was a kid, the first time I got exposed to the pipes and drums was when we were away with my parents one weekend, and there was a parade where we were staying in the hotel. We were in a place called Aberfoyle, which is not far outside Glasgow, but it's a beautiful spot and very, very lush, you know, Scottish mountainside, you know, beautiful place. So it was the perfect place. And we just happened to be there when this parade was going on, and the pipes and the drums were coming out, and it was pretty stirring, you know. I was like, whoa! And the pipes are so loud. I mean, bagpipes are really loud. It's a loud instrument. So, and of course the snare drummers were, and the boom, 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 boom. Yeah, you know, it was awesome, you know. So after that, a guy called Alex Duthart, who was the world champion pipe band drummer, he had his own pipe and drum corps company called the Shot and Dykes, which were based in Kilsyth, just outside Glasgow again. And Alex was the master, and still referred to all the time as the guy who had traditional drumming down, you know, and then some. You know, it was just amazing.
Yeah.
So when I was with George, you know, George Mcgowan, back to the old drum teacher, he when he was doing gigs and he'd do a solo, he would go into a lot of kind of traditional things, you know, like double paradiddles, or he might have a little phrase of a cadence or something like that. And so, yeah, we did talk about that. We talked about rudiments being incorporated, but the military style of playing is different from playing the drum set.
Yes, yeah.
So it's a different thing, but it was definitely a thing, and still is a thing that I think about and practice as well.
Well, that's really fascinating. So I'm very happy to hear about your early years, and now sort of coming. So you moved to London in the 70s. Were you working with any Scottish bands before you moved to London?
Well, I got the gig with a Scottish band who were actually living in London. They were living in Hendon, just in northwest London. They had a house there, and the original drummer, Alex, still a friend, Alex Baird. He was leaving the band because he was asked to join a band called Griffin. And Griffin were a kind of medieval rock band, signed to EMI, doing really well, you know. And so he thought his time with Contraband, which is the band that I joined, he moved on. I joined, and I joined because a friend of mine in Glasgow said, "Hey, there's this band." They called Contraband, who were actually very big in Glasgow. They were tipped as being the next big band because they had a record deal, and you know, they were very good as well. It was folk rock. It was kind of on the Fairport Convention thing type of area, and so they were playing a show in Glasgow, and Alex was leaving, as I said, and this friend of mine heard that they were auditioning drummers at a sound check where they were playing. So I went along to the sound check, and I got on and played, and the guitar player said, "When can you move down to London?" So I was like, "Hey, great." I said, how about," and this was probably just at Christmas time in '75. And I said, "How about the end of January in '76? So he said, "Yep, fine." And that was it. So from then on, the journey really in the industry started, because in Glasgow, it was getting into playing a lot. I played a lot in Glasgow. I played everywhere. I played with big bands. I played with rock bands doing covers, played with show bands. I got a lot of experience, you know, and I was still young when I went to London, so I was like, yes, I'm going to do it.
It must have been quite the journey from the Contraband to Wishbone Ash, which is, you know, a group everybody knows. When did you become a member of that act, and out of the albums that they made, which ones did you play on, and what was your favourite record?
Well, just to tell you how the Wishbone thing happened, I was playing with Martin Turner. Martin was the original Wishbone Ash bass player. On a project, he was taking a hiatus out of Wishbone Ash, and I met him through a friend, and I was recording with him. So bounce a few years later to about 1990, 89, 90, I think, and Martin called me and he said, "Hey, we're in the middle of making a Wishbone Ash." He was back with them. We're in the middle of making a record right now, and Steve Upton, the original drummer, has left while making the album. That's a whole other story they could probably tell, you know. And would I come down and play on a track or two? So I went down there, studio out in the country. Andy Powell was the guitar player, is the guitar player, and he had a farm. Although he lived in America, he had a kind of farmhouse in London, Buckinghamshire, I think it was, just outside. So that's where the studio was. So there we recorded I think I did about 6 songs on that album, because there was another drummer as well, Robbie France, who was with Wishbone for a short time. He passed away, sadly. But Robbie, fantastic drummer, you know, really amazing technician, very good drummer. So he did, I think, 2 songs, and then I did the other 6, I think it was. And it was great. And from there on, you know, Andy, who seemed to be the leader of the group, he said, "Hey, man, do you want to come on the road and do some gigs?" I was like, "Yes, I do," you know. So it was fun, you know. That was the start of the Wishbone Ash journey, which is quite a lot of years with them, you know.
Yeah, I was reading that. I noticed that Andy played with Alvin Lee from 10 Years After. Did you ever get to meet Alvin or any of the other guitar players that Andy was associated with during that period?
Well, Andy, I think, you know, Andy and Wishbone Ash and the 10 Years After went way back touring, so he knew Alvin from ages. You know, I met Alvin. I met Alvin a couple of times, weirdly enough, in a sauna.
Yeah,
it would be like
as you do
in Germany, and you know, you check into the hotel and it's freezing because it was usually January or something like that. So. And I go down to the sauna, and it happened twice in 2 different occasions, 2 different hotels. I go to the sauna, and there's Alvin. So yeah, we played gigs 10 Years After, and Alvin as well. So, but Andy went further back to when all those bands were kind of touring a lot. And,
yeah. The reason I ask about Alvin is because I met Alvin through the drummer Rick Lee, who played in 10 Years, and obviously they're not related. And I got the great privilege to work with him in Reading. So there's a little bit of a correlation between us. When did you first hear the music of Iron Butterfly? And when you were listening to that music, did you ever think there would come a time when you would be a band member?
I think the first time got my attention when I was buying albums, and there was a sampler album called The Age of Atlantic, and on that album there was all the Atlantic artists, including Zeppelin, Buffalo Springfield, MI5, and Iron Butterfly.
Yeah.
So I was like, "Oh, what's that?" Iron Butterfly, because there was a lot of bands in the States as well who you would know of. We had the Brits had our kind of British bands, and the States had theirs. You always thought of the States though being a bit more, oh, it's the United States.
Yes.
their kind of rock bands or psychedelic rock bands as Iron Butterfly were. So I kind of knew them through that. I think on the sampler was a single version of Inagata Vida. So that was the, that's how I got to know about them, you know, really. And to be perfectly honest, it never really, back in the UK, you know, Iron Butterfly never ever came up at all. You know, it wasn't a thing, it wasn't an influence. But I guess to think, as me being a little lad back there buying the Age of Atlantic sampler, you know, and going through, oh, Iron Butterfly, oh, I'm going to be playing with them, you know, that would have been cool, you know, to think about that. So, and that's the thing about life, isn't it, really? Because, you know, when you're younger and you've got your dreams and what you want to do with your life and stuff, and then you hit that place. You've hit that place. You where you would have been very, very happy with knowing all those years back, but you're already in another place and you're already starting to think. So sometimes phrases like "stop and smell the roses" mean a lot, because that's the thing that we should do sometimes. And maybe with this lockdown period, this is a time to, you know, you know, as long as, of course, you're not in dire straits and you're like, how are we going to get through, you know, oh my gosh, you know, we're lucky, we're okay for a while, you know, and yeah, you know, but generally, you know, just breathe in the air and take stock, you know, and let's see how it all evolves. I think I deviated from the question. Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. Well, talking about Dire Straits, I mean, that's how we met. And of course, Mark Knopfler, he was born in Glasgow.
He was, yeah.
Yeah. And we met over our mutual friend, Hal Lines, at one of the NAMM shows.
Is that how you pronounce Lines? I've known Hal, let me think, since about 1979 or 1980, right? And I've always known him as Hal Lindis.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
You could be right. You could actually be all this time. He's never ever said to me, by the way, Ray, my name's Lines, not Lindis. You know, or maybe I've never even said his second name to him, his surname. I don't know, but anyway, sorry about that.
No, it's a funny thing with all of our different accents. You know, I've got Scottish blood, but I certainly don't sound like a Scotsman. We're not like you do. Anyway, just a little bit of back-end history for our listeners. When the young Ray Weston was looking at the roster of the labels, at the time, Iron Butterfly had sold 30 million units, and they were number one for the label until Led Zeppelin came and sold more with Led Zeppelin 4. So there's a little bit of back history for you guys. And then the next question I had, you were talking about their big hit single. It's a 17-minute song, and it's got a huge drum solo in that. So when we come to see you, so you're playing all of that live?
Yeah. It's part of the gig. You know, I mean, the drum solo is a part. Some fans, that's a big part of why they're there. You know,
right.
Because it's great. You know, playing the song and then, you know, after Eric's done his guitar thing and then they bring it down to the groove, and then they go off, and I keep the groove running, and you can hear the crowd, yeah, because they know it. They know the solo, and they know what's coming, and that's kind of cool. You know, it's kind of cool, and it's you know, hats off to Ron Bushy. Hey, Ron. You know, Ron was the original drummer, and he came up with the concept of the solo, which is very kind of it's kind of African-ish,
Mm.
the actual solo. It's very natural. These days, you know, a lot of them, people would dismiss it as not being technical enough or fast enough or whatever it is. But it's got its own thing, you know, which
No,
is,
it does. It's quite trailblazing, and sort of long before John Bonham did Moby Dick.
that's right.
So you know, it's kind of evidential how critical the drums can be, and how fantastic it is when you have a solo like that. So,
Well,
sorry.
So, well, here's an interesting fact: is that when the Butterfly were doing really well, and Ron, the drummer, was hanging out with Ringo,
Oh wow.
and Ringo admitted to Ron that his little 8-bar drum solo, which he does at the end of Abbey Road, boom, 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 ba da 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 da. You know, he said, "Hey, Ron, you know, Ron, I stole that from you." So, you know, that's interesting, you know. So Ringo heard it and thought, "Oh, that's cool." So when they were writing their piece, you know, Ringo had that idea of just making it very Burundi, you know.
Yeah.
Which is great, you know. So that was an influence, Beatles, which is pretty awesome, right?
Yeah, that's very awesome. I noticed when I was listening there, I could hear your kick drum pad on the pedal there. You've got quite a little setup there. Do you think you could play us a little bit of something so we can hear what it sounds like?
Here's so that's it. That's the solo. Very easy bass drum.
Yeah.
And all that, then.
Yeah.
And there you go. You get like the idea. It's very kind of in that Ringo area. But it's kind of cool, and people can move to it. They can dance a little bit to it. So, you know, it's. But thank you, Ron Bushy, because he came up with the idea. Well, he came up with the basic concept, and of course, you know, I paid homage to what he did, and then you put a little bit of your own personality into it, you know.
Yeah.
Just to make it your own a little bit.
All right. Well, just to wind up, it's been wonderful having you as our special guest on our first broadcast for the Scottish Connection. Can you please tell us, you know, what your work is that you're doing today, and where we can find you?
Okay. Well, obviously with everything that's going on right now, all shows, everything is cancelled. Everything that I had in my book is like on hold, you know. But when I am, you know, out there playing, it's like either I Am Butterfly. There's a very cool band called Mad Dogs and the Englishmen, which is a folk rocker band. It's an all-star band. We have like Jimmy Zavala from Eurythmics and Rod Stewart on saxophone. We've got Michael Bolton's 3 backing singers. We have David Whittam on keyboards, who is George Benson's MD, and he plays with Barbra Streisand, and the list goes on. It's a really A-list of players. And the guy who sings is a great friend of mine who lives in Laguna Beach here, Jason Feddy. He's awesome. He is great. He's not cheesy. You know, when you say tribute, you kind of think, this is kind of cool. He doesn't, you know, try and be Joe Cocker like a few other YouTubers are. The guys are trying to sound like Joe Cocker. He has that thing, and he has the personality, but he's not being cheesy, you know, which is kind of cool, really. So it's a great band. I'm really happy to be doing that. And then I play a lot of other shows. I do a bit of production work as well, and I teach. I'm teaching as well, as you can see, you know, with all this in front of me.
Yeah, the production work is great. I'm looking forward to hearing some of your the work that you're producing. It's always wonderful to listen to it from a drummer's perspective. The you know, how they approach the whole art form of recording, and you know, a lot of people would think, well, perhaps the record's going to be very hot with the drums.
Well, yeah, I mean, it really depends. But my first production was a real. I thought, can I do this? I got asked to do it, and I thought, can I do this? I've never produced before. But I worked with great producers before: Nigel Gray, Gus Sturgeon, a lot of really top producers and great engineers. So I kind of thought, hey, well, I know all this stuff. So the first production job that I had was with an artist called Chris Amadeo, and Chris played me all his songs, and we chose, I think, 11, and then worked with them. And when we went into the recording studio, I brought in. We had a good budget. There was a lot of money involved, which was great, which meant that I could bring in great players. I played all the drums, but it made me listen. This is the big thing. All of a sudden, I realized I'm in a very, very important chair here. This is the production chair. It's not just, you're not just being the drummer here. You are there to oversee everything. I don't really play anything else, you know, a little bit guitar, not very well, you know, and stuff like that. So once I got Chris to put down the basic idea of the song with a click, you know, I just kind of work with that, and then just see what I could make better and not clutter. You know, I didn't want to add things for the sake of that being, you know, being able to bring in an instrument. I was trying to, so it kind of really expanded my ears of listening to music, and that was a great project, because we did it over a few months. You know, not working every day, but over a few months. But in between that time, you were really kind of thinking about that song that you were working on, and you know, so it really did, and the album was a success. It came out. We mastered it at the Capitol in Los Angeles, and it came out, and it was great. You know, it sounded great. I had to step away, obviously. You know, I'm not going to listen to this for a while, but I gave a couple of copies away to family and friends, and they, hey, really like that song, blah 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 blah. Yeah, you know, I'm like, that's great. You know, so, and then that led on to another couple of projects, another one. And so, and then I would bring in, you know, guys who I trusted really well,
Yeah,
and knew that they could be creative, you know, give them maybe a little direction, maybe, or maybe not. Well, because, you know, occasionally someone might just play something, and you're like, whoa, hang on a minute, that's great. I never thought of that. You know, and you want to explore that road, you know, because,
yeah.
so it was a really, really, really great experience for me to do that, you know, and still continue to do it.
That's great. I look forward to listening to your new work. Can you please tell the audience the URL for your webpage?
Oh yeah, sure. Well, you can find me at raywestondrums.com. And you can find me on Facebook as well, which is Ray Weston Facebook. You know, you'll find me. I don't think there's many of us.
No, there is only one Ray.
and then and that's it really. You know, Mad Dogs and the Englishmen .com. No, I'm sorry. Joe Cocker tributeband.com is the Joe Cocker band, Joe Cocker tribute band. I really recommend anyone who likes Joe Cocker music should come and see that. And then there's ironbutterfly.com. So, you know, when everything is back to normal, shows will be there. Right now, there's really everything is like postponed.
I know, it totally is. And we've had to postpone our ScotWeek music events. We're having a little ScotWeek festival, which your good self was going to be playing. So we've rescheduled that to September, but it's still uncertain if we have to push that out even further. So we're very privileged and very happy to have Ray as a ScotWeek honorary board member, and the audience, you know, will eventually be able to get to see you play live, and we're very happy to be able to have you come and play live for us when we finally get through this on the other side, and people can come and enjoy all the Scottish talent, and you know, come up and speak to you an elbow, keeping social distancing. Well, thank you so very much for joining us here today on the Scottish Connection, and just a big heartfelt thank you from the board and everybody involved with getting us moving through this year and on to next year. So we'd like to say goodbye, Ray, and we look forward to speaking with you again sometime soon.
Thanks, Steve. It was a pleasure, and looking forward to ScotWeek when everything is done.
All right. Well, you take care. God bless, and thank you very much.
Yes. Bye-bye.
See you. Bye.